up, guys? So, I hold in my hand an invitation to a screener of A Quiet Place Part 2. I was meant to go watch this film on Friday the 13th of March 2020, but Miss Rhoda came along and she had other plans, but I held on to the invitation because I was curious to see how long it would be until I finally got to see this film. It's just been sitting in my bedside table for the last year and 2 months. That's right, 14 months have passed, and now I can finally say I have seen A Quiet Place Part 2 in an actual cinema in a room full, or at least half full, of strangers, social distancing and all, and I'm happy to report that it was totally worth the wait. It's time for me to talk about A Quiet Place Part 2. A Quiet Place Part 2 is once again written and directed by John Krasinski, and aside from a flashback prologue, the film pretty much takes place immediately after where the previous film left us. Now that the Abbott family know the weakness of the alien creatures, they decide to leave their home in search of salvation, and that's all the plot I'm going to give you. It's pretty straightforward, and that's always been like the strongest attribute of the A Quiet Place franchise, the simplicity of it all. Part 2 feels like a very plausible progression of where these characters would go from there. Krasinski has organically expanded the story whilst also providing some answers to some lingering questions that we, the audience, had from the first film, such as just how and when did this alien invasion occur? Who was on the other end of those smoke signal fires that they were lighting up? And what about the rest of humanity? Are there other survivors? Part 2 does what a good sequel needs to do. It delivers more of what we love from the first film, that being the scalp-prickling atmosphere, whilst also expanding the story and characters in new, interesting ways. While I prefer the taut, minimal storytelling of the first film more, because that was a one-location family drama surviving an apocalyptic situation, Part 2 is still a thrilling, nerve-wracking, sensory-heightened experience, made all the more better watching it on a big cinema screen, surrounded by strangers, partaking in a collective sense of silence, and relishing the pin-drop atmosphere and every jolty scare. God, I have missed that. That's just something you don't get watching a film like this for the first time at home, on your sofa, on the TV. It's just not the same. And the reason this movie works as well as it does is because you genuinely care for the characters. Like, whenever the characters were in danger, I truly fretted for their safety. Inside, I was just like, no, 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 no. I've become so attached to the Abbott family. We've already seen them endure so much, and their road to salvation in this film is anything but smooth sailing. The emotional stakes are just as high in this film. Plus, the cast are all exceptional. Emily Blunt, as always, is a force of nature as the protective matriarch Evelyn. But really, it's the kids that shine in this sequel. Noah Jupe as Marcus, but particularly Millicent Simmons, who plays Regan, they really came into their own in this film, and they absolutely slayed it. And also, Cillian Murphy was a nice addition as ally and neighbor Emmett. I also have to give praise to John Krasinski's direction. It was so arresting, particularly in the opening prologue sequence. That was exceptionally effective. I loved how the sound fell in and out in that scene when we switched to and from Regan's point of view. It would alternate from us hearing all the chaos and panic, and then when it switched to Regan's point of view, all the noise falls away and just feel the vibrations and whatever feeling it is that Regan is feeling at the time. It is a cracking opening scene. Marco Beltrami returned to do the score once again, and it's as heart-pounding as it was before. As far as negatives go, what I have to say is quite nitpicky. It's just a minor continuity issue between the two films. And that is that because Part 2 takes place immediately after Part 1, no time has actually passed in the story. However, you can tell that the kids in the film have grown in the time that it takes to film both of the movies. So if you were to watch both of the A Quiet Place films back to back, you would notice a growth between the kids between the movies, which seems a little odd, but it's one of those things where I don't actually care about this issue. Like, it is what it is. They did what they could with what they had, and unless they wanted to go all Irishman on it and like de-age the kids, which is just ridiculous, it's absolutely fine as it is. It's just one of those things where I feel the need to point it out because I did notice it, but it doesn't really bother me. Also, part 2 doesn't have a scene where Emily Blunt gives birth in a bathtub. That scene is one of the best acted and most nail-biting scenes in cinema. That whole storyline of her being pregnant and giving birth gave part 1 that feeling of an impending countdown, you know, like a bomb was about to go off. There was so much tension in the first film. Part 2 still has loads of tension and the action set pieces are bigger and more inventive, but you just can't beat the simplicity of Emily Blunt having to give birth in silence in a bathtub whilst a monster is on the prowl coming to get her. Okay, there's just no way to top that. So let's ask them 3 questions. Firstly, would I watch this again? Definitely. This is a solid sequel. John Krasinski has done a phenomenal job with this follow-up. I'll definitely be watching it again. Question number 2, do I recommend it for you guys? Absolutely. If you're a fan of the first A Quiet Place, then this is a must-watch. And if you can do so and you feel safe going, then please do go watch it in a cinema screen the way it was intended, okay? It will remind you of the joy of watching a film in a cinema with strangers, enjoying the atmosphere, and it's an experience that needs to be treasured and cherished and valued and safeguarded. Like in this world of like films showing up on streaming services and video on demand now, we need to make sure that we are holding on to the big screen experience. Please go watch it in a cinema if you can and you feel safe doing so. Cinema is a necessity. And question number 3, what score do I give it out of 10? I don't think it hits the heights of the first film, but I will say it comes pretty close. So I'm going to give A Quiet Place Part 2 a score of 7 out of 10. But as always, guys, it's just one bloke's opinion. I want to hear from you guys. If you've seen A Quiet Place Part 2, what did you make of it? Just as good as the first? Better, worse? Whatever you have to say, let your voice be in that comment section down below. If you've enjoyed the video, do help the channel out by hitting that thumbs up button. If you want more movie, TV, and Oscars content, don't forget to click subscribe. And if you want to follow me on any social media, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, all those links in that video description down below. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. For more things related to movies, TV, and popcorn culture, I'm Luke Airfield, and I'll see you next time.